In California, during the 1970s, a man began entering homes at night. But he didn't just steal. He didn't just watch. He studied people while they slept, and then he waited for hours until they realized they were no longer alone. At first, it looked like ordinary break-ins, missing jewelry, unlocked doors, footprints in the backyard. Nothing connected them, nothing made sense. But then the pattern changed. A man began targeting couples. He would break in, tie them up, and move silently through their homes. He never rushed, never panicked. He controlled everything, even the silence. These Sacramento residents began locking windows twice. Dogs were brought into homes. Night routines changed, but he adapted. He learned escape routes. He studied police response times. He understood fear better than anyone else, and he used it. The escalation. Then came the violence. The control turned into terror, and the terror turned into murder. But still, no identity, no arrest, no real suspect. Just a name built from fear, the East Area Rapist, and later, the original Night Stalker. But nobody knew who he was. By the early 1980s, the attacks stopped. Just like that. No explanation, no arrest, no closure. And investigators were left with one terrifying question. Did he die? Or did he simply disappear? When a serial offender stops, investigators don't celebrate. They worry. It's because silence doesn't always mean the end. Sometimes it means relocation after years of terror. The attacks stopped. No more break-ins, no more assaults, no more murders. But police knew better than to call it over. There was no arrest, no confession, no body, only silence. And silence was dangerous. Across California, dozens of cases were linked. Handwriting analysis, crime scene patterns, victim descriptions. A single offender was responsible for multiple regions. But without modern technology, each department worked in isolation. Clues existed, but they didn't connect. Sketches circulated, composite drawings were released, but they led nowhere. Witnesses described a man who seemed ordinary, average height, blending in, forgettable. And that was the problem. He looked like everyone else. By the 1990s, the case was cold. Not solved, not closed, just forgotten by most. Except for the people who refused to let it go. And one of those people was about to change everything. Some people research crimes, others become consumed by them. Michelle McNamara was not looking for obsession, but she found it anyway. A journalist begins reading old case files. At first, it's curiosity, then fascination, then something harder to explain. She starts seeing patterns others missed, connections between cases that were never officially linked. A single offender moving across counties, across years, across lives. She calls him something simple, the Golden State Killer, a name that would later define one of the most infamous criminals in U.S. history. Her writing spreads online. We detectives begin noticing her work, not because it is official, but because it is right. As her investigation deepens, her life begins to narrow. Sleep disappears. Time collapses into research. She reads case files late into the night, mapping crimes no one had fully connected. But the deeper she goes, the heavier it becomes. And then, just as her work begins to gain real momentum, everything stops. Not because the case is solved, but because Michelle McNamara is gone. She never saw the ending, but her work did not die with her. It waited. And eventually, it was picked up again. Her unfinished manuscript is compiled, published posthumously, the world finally sees the full scope of her investigation. The fear, the patterns, the decades of unanswered questions. And suddenly, the case is alive again. Years pass. Technology changes everything. Old DNA evidence is retested, but this time, not for matches, for relatives. Family trees begin to form from genetic fragments. Slowly, carefully, line by line, a suspect appears. Not a criminal, not a known offender, but a retired police officer. Living quietly, blending in, his name Joseph James Deangelo. And once investigators begin watching him, they realize something terrifying. He is not hiding. He is simply still there. He was never in the shadows. He was in the open for decades. Surveillance confirms it. DNA confirms it. Investigators move in. No chase, no escape. Just silence as he is arrested in 2018. A man who once terrorized entire communities, now sitting in custody. Evidence is overwhelming. Crime scenes, DNA links, victim accounts. A decades-long pattern finally made visible. He pleads guilty, not because he explains, but because there is no way out. Communities react. Victims feel closure, but not peace, because nothing can undo what happened, and nothing can fully explain how long he went unseen. Michelle McNamara never saw justice completed, but her work helped push it forward. Her obsession became part of the case itself, and even after the arrest, one question remains: how many other cases are still waiting for someone unwilling to forget? Because in the end, the most dangerous criminals are not the ones who run. They are the ones who stay and are never noticed.